Welcome to my 1cc tutorial for normal mode in Streets of Rage. Originally this was intended just to be a normal playthrough of the game, just to beat the game. But I may have over-practiced a little bit in my practice session where I'll go through the game and I'll do a practice run of the game where I just make save states on the emulator and I practice all the bosses. I didn't really practice any combat encounter or groups of combat encounters because, they were all easy enough to deal with without dying. You may lose a life here and there, but I mainly just practiced the bosses in my practice run. And using save and load states, I practiced the bosses too. I was pretty comfortable with a strategy on them. And I would recommend doing that and try to repeat it a few times in practice. Try to beat the boss a few times with save states, starting at the beginning of the boss fight. Do that a few times for each of the bosses. And then you have a very good chance of just, simply beating the game. That should make it easy to beat the game. And if you over-practice like I did, then you may get a 1cc. And if you use some of these techniques that I'm going to show you, I found some really good exploits when I was playing with practice save states. So I'm going to outline all that. I chose Blaze. She's the fastest character. I also like that her jump kick has a good reach to it. If you play as Axel, he has this jumping knee, which is not really a great range. I don't use a ton of jumping attacks because at the end of my last failed attempt on this, I discovered infinite combos. So what that basically means is that you can infinitely combo any of the regular enemies to death. And there is ways to do it on a lot of the bosses too, but you have to adjust your positioning more with those, and they're a little bit more complex, but it's a similar strategy. So I'm going to break down all that. I recommend using Blaze because she's the fastest character, even though she's technically the weakest. In testing, I couldn't notice that she was doing less damage, honestly. It seems like a very minuscule difference in power. But the speed does make a big difference. Having a character that moves faster really allows you to circle around enemies and, use that crowd control, position everyone where you want them to be. So I think it's worth the speed. So I would recommend Blaze. But all the characters have infinite combos, which I'm going to detail in this tutorial. You'll be seeing me using it a lot, especially later on. Bats and pipes are good just to get enemies, away from you fast, and they do a lot of damage. Usually an enemy will die from 2 or 3 pipe or bat hits. They do about the same damage. You can also hit multiple enemies at once, so they're pretty good to pick up. The bottle is kind of useless. I wouldn't recommend picking up the bottles, as they're pretty, they're not really that powerful, and the infinite combo pretty much trumps all that shit. So it's really not even worth, picking up a bottle. But the knife is good. The knife does good damage, even though it doesn't last long. You will get 1-ups from points as well in this game, so that will help you. If you're going for a 1cc run, that really will help you to stay alive. It kept me alive because in practice, I didn't really practice the final boss that thoroughly. I wasn't going for a 1cc run. If I really wanted to get a 1cc run, I would have practiced the final boss a lot more. But I was just going for completion of the game since I did beat this on Sega CD many years ago, but I over-practiced a little bit, so I ended up doing a 1cc on my successful attempt. So while this tutorial is not refined, it's based on a pretty clean run. So for the first boss, it's super easy. All you really need to do is, you can hit him with the bat, or you can just grab him. Just walk up to him and grab him and get a few hits in and then throw him. Like, grab, hit him twice, and then throw him. That does a lot of damage. Just watch out for the boomerang. It may come back and hit you, so be aware of that. You can also throw him as the boomerang is coming back for the invincibility frames. Whenever you do a throw, you're invincible for a few frames, and you can dodge things that way. And that works, anytime in the game when something's about to hit you. If you throw enemies, you get a few seconds of invincibility, and you get the benefit of throwing enemies into each other and getting extra damage, or just moving other enemies out of the way. So you want to use things like that, obviously. That's one of the great things about the Streets of Rage games, was the throws really added a lot to the beat-em-up formula at the time. Although, I think Final Fight probably did it first, but I always preferred Streets of Rage. So here you're seeing some infinite combos. These guys just don't have a lot of health. The way the infinite combo works, you hit a guy maybe 2 or 3 times, then you pause and don't hit, and then you hit him again 2 or 3 times. And you just keep repeating that. strike 2 or 3 times, pause for a moment, strike 2 or 3 times, pause for a moment, and etc. until the guy is dead. Now, the great thing about this infinite combo is, I'm not using it on all the guys because they have such low health, but the great thing about the infinite combo is that you can group, entire waves of enemies grouped together and infinite combo them all at once. And I'm going to show some of that later. You're seeing a little bit now where I got the woman and the other guy grouped together with the infinite combo. You're going to see a lot more of that later on, and it's a really essential technique in preserving my lives throughout this run. Now, you do have also a rear attack by pressing jump and strike at the same time. You do a rear attack. I never use it in this game. In Streets of Rage 3, I used it like a motherfucker, but this is a very different game, much easier game than Streets of Rage 3, obviously. And I have a tutorial on that as well, so check it out if you want to check it out. And there's also, I have a tutorial for the Mania Plus mode of Streets of Rage 4. So I have some decent Streets of Rage content on the channel as well. I need to go back and do a solo run of Streets of Rage 2. Never beat that on single player. I've only beaten that 2 players years ago. So I should go and do that and make a tutorial on that. That would be cool. So yeah, a lot of times I do refine certain tutorials where I'll go and use save and load states to refine sections for demonstrative purposes to show like the best executions of each section. But I thought this came out pretty good. And I only do that with some of my tutorials. A lot of them are just me adding commentary to my playthroughs, and I don't necessarily, edit in any better footage or anything. I just leave them the way they were. I may edit out deaths, depending on the type of game. For beat-em-ups, I don't really edit out deaths because it just doesn't make sense to do so. But I always list in my descriptions, how I edited and all that stuff, so there's no deception or anything like that. I always hate that shit. So these martial arts enemies in the gray are, a little bit different. They're more dangerous, obviously, than the regular thugs. But same thing applies to them as it does to every regular enemy in the game, even these hobos. Once you get that first combo in, keep it going with the infinite combo trick that I mentioned. So for the hobos, all you got to do is get those first few punches in on them. And try to isolate them. Try to kill the other guys, because the hobos are the most annoying enemy out of all these enemies because they throw shit at you. So take out the whip bitch, take out all the other enemies if you can. Use those infinite combos to try to group the guys together. The hobos have a little bit of protection with that juggling shit, so it gives them a little bit of a wall that you have to punch through, which is a little bit of a pain in the ass. You got to get pretty close to them to land a hit. Once you get that first punch in, though, you're good. You just you can spam your infinite combos. Now, the most annoying thing about boss fights are the minions, because the bosses are really, really easy once you figure out some tricks with them. Now, I don't know if I got the positioning right here. I probably lost a life, but you'll see. If you don't see it on this incarnation of the boss, you'll see it later because you fight most of the bosses several times throughout the game. So there's plenty of opportunities, I figured, for me to show you what I was trying to pull off. So that's why I figured I really didn't need to go in and edit and splice everything. I figured there would be plenty of opportunities for me to explain. We'll see if I get it on this part. I don't really remember. I haven't watched my run yet, but there's a positioning for this guy where you can infinite combo him, I found. It's a little bit below him like that. So there it goes. Yeah, that's it. So I figured this out with save state practice, and it's kind of hard to get the positioning right, so it's not the easiest thing to do. But if you try to position yourself just like that and get a little bit below him, you can infinite combo his ass and take him out. Now, I recommend practicing that because it's a lot harder to pull off than it looks. So I would say use save and load states and practice it. See if you can pull it off. If not, there are alternate ways to deal with him, and I think I do show it on the dual fight where you fight 2 claw guys at once, which is probably the hardest fight in the game. Potentially. So, yeah, so it was cool that it turned out to be a 1cc. I always like getting a 1cc run, even though it wasn't the intention. I didn't think I was going to make it, even though I got to the last boss with like 5 lives, but I didn't practice him well. I figured I would drain all 5 of my lives easily and waste to continue. And I did almost, completely fuck it up. But I had maybe a life or 2 left at the very end, so I just barely made the 1cc. And if I didn't explain it, 1cc is no continues used for those that are not, familiar with the terminology. I'm not really a 1cc or no death runner, but I do get them sometimes. And occasionally I will make an extra effort to do that. If I think I'm close to doing it in a game, I may do it. And then, of course, some games are really not that difficult, so I don't really care about getting a no-death or a 1cc because, the game, it's not really a big deal. So to throw enemies, you just walk up to them and you'll grab them automatically, and then you can either strike twice or you can keep striking until they fly back, and that'll do good damage. But I usually like to strike twice and then throw them. That seems to do the most damage. So just some basic information. Throws are great, as you can see, because they move guys out of the way. They throw guys into each other, which damages the other guys. And it's just a good way to keep guys off your ass and keep putting out damage. Crowd control is really the key to these kind of games. And you'll especially see that heavily in Streets of Rage 3 playthrough that I did, and which is a really hard game for a beat 'em up. And the Streets of Rage 4 Mania Plus, has tons of crowd control. But you're definitely going to see it here. So for these guys, you can try to hold on to your pipe and try to take out as many of them as you can. It does make it easier if you're able to do it. If not, then you want to try to group them and do infinite combos, as I was mentioning. And I'm going to demonstrate that more later. I didn't need to do it a lot at this point in the game because I had pipes, and the enemies are still pretty easy at this point in the game. It does get trickier later on. This game took me, I believe, a little bit over 4 hours, maybe 4 hours and 12 minutes to beat. I did over-practice a bit, I believe. But that was about what it took me. I actually played through this game. I did a practice run first on the Xbox 360 version on Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. And the reason I did it that way was because, it allows save states legitimately to beat the game. So I just did a cheat run through it, and it counted as a legitimate kill on my game's beaten list. So it was like a 2-for-1. I practiced on that. I got a kill, and then I was able to take that practice and knowledge over to, my actual legit Genesis run. I wanted to beat the game on Genesis just to get it on my Sega Genesis kill list, games beaten list. Now for this guy, all you got to do is stand in front of him and keep punching, and he'll walk into your punches. I didn't perform it too well here. You see, I got kind of annihilated, and the minions were fucking with me. But the idea is the same. The problem is you got to watch out for that minion. So, don't be afraid to use the police car by hitting A to get that extra damage. Only use it really on bosses for the most part in this game. You don't really want to use it too much on regular enemies unless you're about to die. If you're about to die, use the police car because it doesn't carry over to your next life. You get a new one with each new life. So don't try to save it if you're about to die. Use it and try to survive to the next food pickup or the end of the stage. But yeah, you'll see me fight that guy again, and I'll demonstrate it better, I believe. But the idea is to stand in front of him, let him charge into you, and just keep mashing punch. And usually you can lock him in and just keep punching the shit out of him. It's somewhat of an infinite combo, but it's not really a combo because the guy does break away, and he just keeps coming back and running into your fist. So, it's not as reliable as some of the other combos. Like the claw combo I did was like an infinite combo where you pretty much can't fuck it up once you lock it in. But it's a little tricky to lock in the positioning. So yeah, you can even, you can get the combo going for a while, then throw guys to finish them off. You'll have an idea of how much health they have, and that way, they won't get back up because you'll know exactly how much health they have pretty much after a while. And it's also good to toss a near-dead enemy into other enemies for a little extra damage, move them back. But so you can see me starting to do the infinite combos more here. And guys are just walking into my fist and get infinitely comboed. So that's the idea. With most of the crowd control in the game, that's going to be my main strategy. You'll see I barely use jumping attacks at all. Which, jumping attacks can be nice, but they do very little damage. They're good crowd control. But you don't necessarily need them. If you can throw guys into each other and try to group everyone into infinite combos, you can just rely on that. In Streets of Rage 3, the only way you were really able to get infinite combos was by using the hack. There was a hacked version that someone made, and characters like Shiva... Actually, Shiva may be in that game. I think Shiva had an infinite combo, but he was maybe an unlockable character in Streets of Rage 3. I wanted to beat Streets of Rage 3 ultimately with one of the default characters, since it's harder to do that. But I also played with some of the special characters. I played the hacked version. I did that as practice. I beat the Japanese version, which is much easier. I did that years ago. I did all that for practice to beat the normal Streets of Rage 3, the US version. So yeah, same things here. You have a few different types of enemies, but the strategy is pretty much the same. And of course, with beat-em-ups, as I always describe in my tutorials with these games, the idea is to move up or down on a different plane so that the enemies have to approach you diagonally. That always gives you the advantage in these games. So It's almost like an unspoken rule of beat 'em ups. If you can, try to hit these guys in the pit. But it doesn't really matter. They're easy enough. There's an extra life there, so make sure you grab that. This was definitely a satisfying one to beat again. I haven't beaten it in years, so I didn't remember. I didn't know about any of these strategies when I beat it, obviously, but it was cool to kind of destroy the game and really kind of exploit it. I may try the hardest mode again. I tried it once just for fun. I just tried it after beating the 1cc on normal, and I think I got near the end. But I would want to do some isolated save state practice just on that hardest mode. If I really want to beat it, that's what I would do. I was just fucking around, checking it out, testing it out. So yeah, if you're doing pretty well with the crowds, managing everything, you should have a nice little stockpile of lives by this point if you haven't died. It gives you some leeway to fuck up, because there are parts where it's easy to fuck up for sure. One bad thing about this game is if you're over, two weapons, you'll keep picking it up. You'll pick up the other weapon until the weapon's waste, and you'll get damaged because you just keep picking up the same weapon again. Or the next weapon. You pick up one weapon, then you pick up the other one, and all you're trying to do is punch the enemy, Double Dragon Advance, one of my favorite beat-em-ups, fixes that problem by having a separate button for picking up weapons. It also allows you to drop. It allows you to drop weapons at any time, which is, a separate button for that. Something like that. I think it's just that if you have like nunchucks and you're striking over another weapon, you won't pick it up. I think that might be how they fixed it. It was a simple fix, but it works great. Of course, this was an earlier game. So for this guy, don't do that. Never throw the guy. I was fucking it up. I didn't mean to throw him, but that's what happens if you throw him. You take massive damage because he's fucking fat. So don't throw the guy. Don't be afraid to use your police car, like I said here, to get some extra damage. It's always worth using it on the bosses. Don't do that. I did that twice. Did not mean to do that. So you may want to throw a knife at him or move the minion out of the way. But the idea is to try to cross over pretty quickly from the opposite side, move diagonally. And once you get the first hit, you can get an infinite combo, pretty much. See, I was able to throw for the invincibility frame. It worked out perfectly. And I dodged him as he was walking into me. I used the throw frames to dodge that charge. And then I was able to continue my combo on the other side. So if you can do something like that, do that. But that was kind of just a lucky thing because usually it doesn't work out that well. It's kind of hard to set it up like that. I think I just kind of, reacted in the moment and ended up, working out nicely. But the idea with the fat guy, and I'm going to show it again later as I show all the bosses multiple times because the game makes you fight them again and again, is that once you get that first hit in, you can keep the infinite combo going. But for the fat guy, he will continue to kind of grind through your strikes. See, I'm grouping guys together with the infinite combo, but he will grind through your strikes. So what you got to do is you got to reposition yourself every few strikes and move back a little bit. You got to, you got to like use, because when you punch the fat guy or any guy, they're stunned for a moment. You want to use that stun time to adjust your position a little bit, move back a little bit, and continue punching him. So you're going to see more of that later, but you can keep the combo going pretty much for his full health bar if you adjust your positioning right. If he gets too close, he's going to walk through you, and you're going to have to turn back around and try to catch him on his way, out of your combo. Turn around and try to catch him and get the combo going again. But if you can't, then just retreat and, walk diagonally to dodge his charge again and get him in another combo. And the second one, you should be able to get him in the second barrage. It's not always easy to get, to kill that fat guy in one combo. It's a little hard to do it in one. You may have to do it twice, but either way, it's very effective. So it can be a little tricky to combo all these guys because there's so many of them. So use your jumping attacks like you see me here if you need them, just to get a little breathing room. That's really the best thing about the jumping attack. Now, jumping attacks can be a pretty reliable way to damage enemies. They just do such little damage. That's the problem. And I find that you're just better off using infinite combos and setting those up. So for these whip women, these ones are the first ones in the game that now will just kneel down and not take damage. So they're kind of, they can be very irritating if you don't know how to deal with them. The idea with them is wait for them to stand up and immediately grab them. Or infinite combo them. If you can hit them from a little bit of range, so you can get them in infinite combos as well. The good thing about them is that they'll stay crouched down as long as you're striking. So if you need some room to deal with the other enemies, just keep punching and they'll stay crouched down while you deal with the other enemies. You want to wait for them to get up, punch them twice, and then either, kick them back or throw them and do the most damage. I like to punch twice and throw them usually to do the most damage. So grab them, punch them twice, and then throw them. And of course, the throw, you press back and punch while the enemy's grabbed, if you don't know that already. See, they'll leave you alone as long as you keep striking. Just don't be in range of their whip. If you're at the wrong range, they'll just whip you. So you got to be, keep your distance a little bit. Or just stay on the bottom plane or the upper plane. Don't be lined up, right in front of them. You don't want to be right in front of them unless you're trying to grab them. And then, of course, some of these whip bitches are just normal ones that just stand and let you hit them. So those are easy to deal with. The ones that crouch are the hardest ones to deal with because they're a little irritating. But like I said, just walk around them until they stand up, grab them immediately, and then just do your combos. Punch, punch, and throw. I recommend inching the screen here so you can deal with less enemies at a time. Don't try to run. You can't really run. You can power walk through here, though. But yeah, don't try to haul ass. Just take your time. There is no running in this game as it's an earlier beat 'em up. Which Streets of Rage 3 actually, to me, plays the best out of all the Streets of Rage games, but it's my least favorite, strangely enough. Because the layout and everything, it's just a lot more repetitive, and bosses take too long. There's just a lot of issues with it. I ended up really, really enjoying it in the end. It was really satisfying, great game, but I do like the other two games better. So yeah, for this guy, if you still have your pipe, do the same thing with the rapid punching, but just play baseball with him. Just, time your strikes. Get a little distance so you have some time to react. You don't want to be right on his ass. It'd be hard to react in time. But it's very easy to do if you have a pipe. So you can do that. Now you can also do that just by mashing punch. He'll keep running into your fist as you mash punch. And I'll probably demonstrate that later. I did try to show that on the previous battle with him, but I fucked that one up. So yeah, try to inch the screen here and let a few guys come out at a time so you don't have the whole crew. And just try to, walk with the pipe and just take them out. Now, if you don't have a pipe, it takes about 2 knockdowns to take them out. Now, for this part, they want you to use the police car they just gave you on the hobos. I recommend not using the police car here so you can have 2 of them saved up for this next boss fight coming up, which is maybe the hardest boss fight in the game. So just deal with these hobos normally by using your infinite combos. Throw them when need be. You got to get in close to them a lot of times because of that little barrier they have. So land the first punch and then get your combo in. You can also punch the torches out of the air that they throw. But I'm not usually going for that. Sometimes it happens, but I usually do it accidentally. So I recommend just dealing with it in a similar way. Keep yourself spaced out and just try to isolate them. Kill one at a time, or group them together if they're close together. Try to group them in an infinite combo, obviously. But yeah, as I was saying, if you don't have the pipe for the martial art guys, you can just slowly line them up in a straight line and kind of infinite combo them as they just group into your fist. They'll just stand there and get all grouped together if you do it right. So you don't need the bat. You can do all this shit with just infinite combos without any weapons. You really don't need them. But the weapons work well here. So, you're going to have more of the same enemies, nothing too difficult. Save the food items for when you actually need them or when you have to leave the screen. It's better to budget your food items and not take them when you don't really need, the full... Because the turkey gives you full health back. So you should try to get your health bar down low, if you're gonna take that much damage. I'm not saying take damage intentionally. No need for that. Now here I had the bat, which I didn't want, obviously, but for these women, it's better just to throw them. So all I'm going to recommend for this is to throw these women. That's it. Don't try to strike them regularly. If you see me doing it, just ignore that because you shouldn't really try to do that. So what you want to do is walk towards them, and it'll make them jump over you. When they jump over you, immediately press the opposite direction and grab them immediately. Try to latch onto them immediately and grab them, and then just throw them. Strike them twice and throw them if you want maximum damage, but you don't always have time to do that. So just, concentrate on just throwing them immediately. course, now I have 2 police cars saved up, so I'm going to use them on this fight because this is one of the most irritating fights in the game. And you do have to fight them again later with no special cars, no police cars. So that's the hardest, to deal with. But this is one of those fights that you really, really need to learn with save and load state practice, because I got to the end of the game on 1cc in one of my previous attempts. I lost over 2 continues on this fucking fight at the end of the game. And then, of course, the last boss drained the rest of my lives. So you really need to learn that fight. That's one of the key fights to learn in the game. But the idea is, and I'm going to go over it later when you see me beat it with no police cars. I'll go into more detail on that fight later. But the idea is to walk towards them, let them jump over you, immediately grab them. You have to be very, very quick with the grab. Otherwise, they'll grab you first. Now, if you do get grabbed by any enemy in the game, they're going to throw you. And to get out of that, you pretty much have to mash the jump button and maybe hold up on the D-pad. It's something like that, and you'll get out of the throw. You'll land on your feet and not take any damage. And you're going to be using that a lot on that fight because you're going to get thrown a lot on that fight. So be ready to use that. Now, it's not always 100% accurate for me, but it works most of the time. So now, this is going to be similar to the other stages, but there's going to be some crushers that are added in and conveyor belts. It doesn't really change the gameplay too much, though. But it does have one of the hardest boss fights in the game because there's 2 of those claw guys at the same time, which is pretty hard to deal with. So, of course, these women are very evasive. So just ignore them. They'll just crouch down while you deal with other enemies. As long as you keep punching, they're going to leave you alone. But they are sneaky. You can see they'll pop up and whip your ass. So they can be pretty sneaky. So at this point, I have 6 lives. I don't remember if I lost a life yet. I probably did. I may have lost a few lives. I'm not sure. I think I did. I wasn't really paying attention. But it's not too hard to get to this point with a nice lives count. If you're using these crowd control methods well. And of course, you want to know how to fight the bosses. The bosses are where you can really drain lives in these kind of games. So you really want to make sure you practice those boss fights with save and load states. Don't even try to beat the game your first time playing, unless you want to. But if you just want to beat this game, I recommend just you can just boot it up and start practicing immediately, because you're likely not gonna beat the game on your first time playing. It has like 3 continues. It's limited continues, so you're likely not gonna just play the game your first time and beat it. It's unlikely. So don't even try to beat it your first time playing. Just make saves on all the boss fights, or any parts that you think are gonna give you trouble. Save and reload and practice. But mainly the bosses is what I think is all you really need to focus on. So for this guy, you'll see once you get that first hit, you can readjust your positioning. I don't know if I had to do it here. I was unsuccessful that time. I let him break out. See, that was the problem. But you shouldn't lose more than 1 life on these guys ever. I mean, if you do it right, you really shouldn't lose any lives. But I usually fuck it up. But I thought this run was clean enough to make the point. You know what I mean? Like, I fucked up on that Freddy dude, but once I got him in the position, you got the point. So it doesn't really make a difference if I show it with no deaths or not, as long as I can, show you what I intended to do and I'm able to execute it. The knife guys are one of the more annoying enemies, the charging knife enemies, because they usually show up with a lot of other enemies and they keep charging into you. It's very irritating. But you just want to get that first punch in them, combo them, just like you do with all the other guys. Really, there's not really any really unique strategies with the different types of enemies too much. I mean, there is a little bit. Like the whip bitches, obviously they have more range, so you want to stay out of their whip range. But I mean, it's not a huge adjustment in strategy to deal with the different enemies. Especially with the infinite combo. The infinite combo is kind of like the equalizer, you know what I mean? It kind of equalizes all the normal enemies and makes them very similar fights. Probably because this was the first game, it wasn't quite as polished as the later games, because infinite combo really does change the whole structure of the gameplay, once you know how to do that. It's very easy to do. The more skillful part about the infinite combo is not doing the infinite combo, but it's grouping guys together, effectively having maybe 4 or 5 enemies grouped into an infinite combo and taking them all out in an infinite combo is kind of like the pinnacle of what you can do with it. It's a very powerful technique as far as its usefulness goes. So the way the crushers work, if you get within a certain range, the light will blink and then the crusher will come down. It seems like it would be great for taking out enemies, but it's pretty damn... It's picky. You know, it's real picky. Like, the guys can be close to it when it crushes and it won't even hit them, so... It always seems to manage to hit you for whatever reason, but it's just not very reliable to use against enemies. I don't really recommend. I mean, you can trigger it every once in a while and just see if it hits an enemy. That's what I usually do, but I don't rely on it. So you get another police car and a 1-up here, which is always nice. You're going to want both police cars, so don't use them on the regular enemies if you can avoid it. You want to have 2 police cars on the boss if you can save them up. Because this boss fight coming up is the, you know, one of the hardest in the game for sure. Because it's 2 of those Freddy guys at once, which is a big pain in the ass. Those guys can be really irritating to deal with even when there's only one. It's kind of hard to get that infinite combo position. Even on one of them is a little tricky to do. I fucked it up a lot before, but it is a way you can deal with them and really beat them without losing, or beat one of them without losing a life. There's 2 of them, you don't really have the room to try to infinite combo one of them, so you have to fight them a little differently. And the way I'm going to fight them is with throws, because it's just easier to throw them. But they're a pain in the ass because they can easily claw you while you're trying to grab them. They're not the easiest to deal with. Now, of course, I over-practiced a lot of parts and I under-practiced a lot of shit too. You know, it was kind of just an uneven balance of practice. So there's parts where I'm sure I could have beat them without any deaths and did it consistently if I would have practiced more. But my practice run was purely just to beat the game. That was it. So I didn't obsess over mastering each boss fight or anything like that. I knew I had plenty of lives and continues to work with, as long as I wasn't draining lives and continues on any of the fights. You know, I didn't want to have any boss fights where I was losing like 3, 4 lives or 8 lives. You know, I think I drained over 6 lives on those women at the end of the game. I really didn't practice them well enough. And the problem was I practiced with Axel. I did my practice run with Axel, so I think grabbing them with Blaze was a little bit different. It didn't work as well for me as it did with Axel. Or with I think I was able to throw better with Axel on that female fight with the twins. So here's your boss fight with the 2 Freddys. I recommend having those 2 police cars saved and just use those immediately. Just cash them in, because if you die without using it, it's just going to be a waste. So just make sure you cash them both in. It's the hardest fight in the game, pretty much, so you'll be forgiven. It's definitely one of the hardest fights in the game. So, I mean, you know, you're not going to lose any sleep over using the police cars here to try to get these guys down. So now they're down to their final health bar with half of their health each. So the idea here is to try to grab and throw them. If you can grab, punch twice, and throw, that's like the maximum damage, I believe. But if not, see, it's very hard to try to combo them like I was trying to do. It's better to grab them and throw them. Grab, punch twice, and throw if you can. See? But it's still tricky because they're sneaky motherfuckers. I was trying to get them in a combo, but see, it's not the easiest thing to line up that infinite combo. So that's something you really need to practice probably more than I did if you want to go that route. It is a very effective way if you can get that positioning for the infinite combo, but it's not the easiest thing to pull off. I fail it many times. So I decided to just do it safer this time and just try to throw them all. And it ended up being pretty clean. I mean, I still fucked it up, but losing 1 life on that fight really is not bad, since it's the hardest fight in the game pretty much. Aside from the last boss, the bosses themselves, none of them are really that hard, like I said, but the minions are constant. The minions keep spawning in, and they constantly interrupt whatever the fuck you're trying to do. That's what makes the boss fights tricky, is that you're constantly getting interrupted. So now this is a very short level with no bosses. In this level, the best thing you can do is try to stay in the middle of the elevator and toss the guys off the edge. You got to be around the middle of the elevator, so if you're too far to the left, you won't be able to throw them far enough. And you don't want to do a body slam throw. You want to do that distance throw. And if you do that, you'll start throwing the guys off the ledge. You can end the fights really fast by doing that. So try to throw all the guys off if you can. I mean, sometimes it's easy enough to just combo the guys. I've never gotten thrown off the ledge in any of my attempts, so it's hard to get thrown off. You don't have to worry about that. So you don't have to worry about like not staying near the edge if you're worried about getting thrown off the edge. You probably won't get thrown off because of that little wall. But for whatever reason, when you throw, at least with Blaze, they go flying right off the edge. It might be the way Blaze throws. Or maybe it works with all the other enemies too. You know, I didn't test it. I haven't played in a while. But so you can throw the guys right off the edge. He has a great throw. So either way, it's effective. And I'm going to recommend a little bit later using your police car when it gets a little bit of an orgy with a lot of difficult enemies at once. But it's not at that point yet. Now, if you're about to die, use the police car anyway because you can't save them to the next life. So Always waste them up if you're about to die. Now, there is no healing items on this level. The best you can do is just try to survive till the end of the level. But, you may give yourself a fighting chance if you use the police car even a little early in the level. Though if you have to use it that early, then you're probably going to lose at least one life on this level because it gets hard. So I used my first police car there. I would have held out and used it on I believe one of the later waves that's coming up soon, but the problem was my health was getting low. So I went and used it. It does wipe out all the enemies that are on screen, so it is very useful. But now I probably will end up dying. But losing one life on this level is totally good. It's not bad. To lose only one life is fine. You should be getting a decent amount of 1-ups on points. You get a lot of 1-ups on points and a few pickup 1-ups. And, if you're doing well with everything, you should have a nice little supply of lives going into the final stage, which is the next stage. I also use a rapid fire controller. I like I always like rapid punching and beat 'em ups with rapid fire controllers, but it doesn't really matter much for this game. It's just a little thing that I like to do. As far as the infinite combos, you're not going to be holding down rapid fire anyway with punching because you have to, break it up a little bit to keep the infinite combo going. You do a few strikes, pause for a moment, then resume. So you're not going to just be holding down rapid fire punching. You can do that in a lot of beat 'em ups, but not in this. Unless you don't care about the infinite combo, but it's kind of a waste not to do it. It just wipes enemies out, as you can see. You can take out their whole health bar. So now coming up, I believe, is the hardest wave in this elevator. So I recommend using your police car here because you're going to get a new police car when the next level starts. So don't worry about saving it. It's near the end of the stage. So use your police car at this part right here. Of course, you don't have to. You can just try throwing everybody off the ledge. I was still holding out and just saving it up for the fuck of it, but because I knew I was going to get my health back anyway at the beginning of the next stage, because this stage is almost done now by this point. But that's the hardest wave of this stage, so when all those enemies come out, definitely use your police car and get rid of them. Now you got a few scragglers left, and then the stage will be over, so it's very easy. And the main trick, like I said, at this level, try to throw all the enemies you can off the ledge. That really makes it a lot easier. You can, of course, group guys together and do infinite combos, but it gets pretty fucking crowded in such a small space. So throwing works better, I think, because you can throw guys into each other for crowd control, and you can get rid of them instantly. I think I barely survived here, which is good. I managed not to waste another life unnecessarily. I think I only died once on that stage, which for me, I consider that a good enough run of the stage, considering I didn't do any isolated practice on that stage to try to do it without dying or anything. I would have to do a little extra practice or just do better. It wouldn't take much more practice to get that down, but it's good enough. As long as you're doing well on those bosses and not losing more than a life on any of the boss fights, you'll probably be in good shape. Though you should be beating boss fights without dying, of course. You should at least beat some of them without losing a life. But I think even if you lose, one life on all the boss fights each, you probably would be fine. If you're doing a 1cc, you'll probably get enough 1-ups to survive. But it also depends how many lives are you losing during the combat encounters, with regular enemies, So it varies, but you can master the bosses, but if you're not good with the crowd control, the crowd control can be a little tricky sometimes. So if you're not good at that, then that's going to make it hard to get the 1cc. You might need to practice crowd control. But once you learn the basic idea of the combat, there's not much to practice and learn. Once you have down those techniques for crowd control, you're going to be able to use that for any combat encounters. Basically, you may just have to change the tactics slightly depending on different enemy types, but the same is pretty much going to apply with some slight modifications. So you learn the basics, you should be fine with most of the regular enemy combat in the game. And then it's going to be the bosses are going to be the only thing that really drain your lives if you don't know how to fight them. So the pipe is good. It makes guys, die pretty quickly. Usually 2 or 3 knockdowns will take out an enemy. As you noticed, actually, I said that you'd get a police car back on the next stage. Normally you would, but on the final stage, actually, you cannot use the police car. which is strange to me because it was okay to, call the fucking police car in on a fucking boat. I mean, that was logical. But and inside of an industrial complex, a police car can drive in there just fine. But for some reason, it's not allowed to come into the final mansion. Maybe there was like private security outside the front door that I missed. But I guess the car didn't want to take the elevator to get up to the top floor. That's probably what happened. So yeah, you cannot use the cars here. So you're going to have to fight all the bosses. You're going to have to basically know how to. This is where you have to know how to fight all the bosses without any specials. So they make sure that you know how to actually fight the bosses. So, it's a little test. But if you're in practicing with save and load states, you should be practicing beating all the bosses without the police car. I don't think I mentioned that, but when you're doing your save and load state practice, don't rely on the police cars. Try to practice the bosses so you can beat them without dying and without using the police cars. That way you don't need to rely on that. Besides, you need to know how to fight all the bosses normally anyway on the final stage. So you're just going to you're going to fuck yourself over at the end if you don't know how to fight the bosses without relying on the police cars. So you want to make sure you learn that. But once you learn that shit, man, you got this game fucking done, man. This shit is killed. You know what I mean? That's all you need to really. You just need to know the bosses and do decent on the levels. You don't. I mean, if you're not trying to get a 1cc, you'll beat the game very easily as long as you know how to fight the bosses. So here I get the combo again. It took me a few tries here. I got hit a bit. But see, this is the combo, and it's very much something you can repeat, but it is tricky to get the positioning. But it definitely works. Now, the bosses don't have any life bars here, so it's a little tricky to know when they're about to die. But if you're doing an infinite combo, you shouldn't even be worried about that. You just mash the button until the guy dies. So you see a cleaner execution of that. It's really those fucking minions that make the bosses difficult at times. I didn't notice a huge difference on hardest mode, which is the hardest mode, obviously, when I tried it briefly, but it is definitely harder, for sure. It's a decent amount harder, but it's not like, playing Halo 2 on Legendary from normal or something like that, A lot of these old games, they had very minimal differences in the difficulty settings, so this falls in line with that. A lot of times if you beat easy or normal, or like say you beat a game on easy from this time period, if it lets you play through the full game. Some games didn't let you do that. But easy would be similar to normal. Like if you could beat easy, you could probably beat normal in your next attempt. It wasn't usually that much of a difference. So yeah, for this guy, this is the way it's supposed to fucking look. This is what I was trying to do. But of course the minions fuck it all up. Now occasionally this guy does break through this randomly. It just seems out of nowhere. I'm sure there's a reasoning behind it, but maybe it would be better to try to time my punches as he's coming instead of just mashing the fucking button the whole time. Or in my case, holding down the button because I haven't set the rapid fire. But, it might be better to actually try to time the punches, which I made no effort to try to do. So, if you're practicing and he breaks through, maybe try timing it. And make sure you have enough distance away from him. That's about it. Very easy, though, if you do that. It's just not that easy, though, when you have minions trying to fucking throw you and punch you while you're trying to deal with the boss. So that's where the challenge comes in. Sometimes you got to break up what you're doing to deal with the minion. But they come back immediately, so they keep coming in. So that's, that really is the most irritating thing about the boss fights. But you can see that the techniques are pretty simple if you can get a boss, isolated. So you can use the stun grenades if you want. They're not really that helpful. If guys are getting really, really aggressive and mobbing you like they are here with me, infinite combos are not going to be that viable sometimes. So you may just want to rely more on a few hits and then throwing the guys into each other. It makes it easier for crowd control. You can use your jumping attacks too, even though I didn't really do it. So same thing here. You just got to, do that diagonal movement just right to get behind him. It takes a little practice. Make sure you got it down because it is tricky to get behind him when he's trying to flame you. So you got to get used to his movement. So that comes with practice. But see, a diagonal movement from the top to the bottom worked well on that positioning. Now, when he's coming from the bottom, you do that same pattern, the same movement pattern, but you do it in a different direction. So you want to practice that. It's easy, but it's not really that easy if you don't have it down. It can drain a lot of lives because he does massive damage. You also can readjust your positioning, as I said, to keep the fat guy comboed. As he's moving closer to you, as you combo him, you want to move back a little bit. Because you have a moment to readjust your positioning since the guy's stunned after each hit. So, yeah, so that's basically it for that. And those whip bitches are very easy. You can fight one at a time, just do an infinite combo on each one. And it's very easy. I think I was shaking out my hands here. They get numb sometimes. So this hobo is very easy. Just infinite combo his ass. And you are approaching the end of the game now. So with these guys, try to line them up in a straight line by going towards the bottom or top of the screen, all the way down or all the way up, basically. Try to get them lined up, and they won't even engage you sometimes, if you noticed. I was able to combo his friend while the other one stands there and watches. If you inch it really slowly and combo them like that, you can kind of just let them take turns into your fist. It's not hard to do, so just be patient with that. Try to line them up. Try to get them to walk into the fist like that and group together. So I have 5 lives at this point, but coming up is, one of the hardest fights in the game. Again, these 2 women. So I demonstrated a little better here, I think. So see, they grab you very easily, though, so you got to be careful with that. But you want to walk towards them, and they will jump over you. So that lures them to jump over you, and then you can get behind them real fast and grab them, and then throw them. Now, there's a little bit more to it. When they're too close together, you don't necessarily want to go for the grab because the other enemy may jump kick you. So you want to plan your attacks carefully. There's times when you don't do it. Most of the time I try to avoid punching them like that because, it usually causes problems. And you want to make sure you're recovering from their throws, like I said, by mashing the jump button and I believe pressing up on the controller, but I don't know if that's necessary. You also want to move back a bit when throwing. After you finish a throw, move back a little bit because a lot of times the other woman is going to be coming out from a jump kick on you as soon as you finish throwing the woman. So you want to move back. So make sure you throw and then get in the habit of moving back a little bit because otherwise you will get jump kicked. So there is a rhythm to it. When you get jump kicked, you take massive damage, as you see. So it's very irritating. Also, if you get thrown, you take a ton of damage from the throws. If you don't recover from them, you got to know how to do the throw recovery. Otherwise, you're probably going to get destroyed. So you see how much damage that does? A huge amount of damage. So yeah, just focus on throwing them and just be ready to, after you land the throw, back up a little bit. So that the other one jump kick doesn't land on you, That's about it. There's a rhythm to it, though. Once you practice, you'll get a rhythm to it where it comes out pretty smooth. I didn't practice it enough to do it deathless or anything, but I had it down pretty good. It wasn't like something where I was going to drain a shit ton of lives, so that was good, I guess. I believe I get an extra life after killing her, but I don't have my health back since they don't give you any health replenishment items in this area. So now is the final boss. Now, if you choose the wrong answer, you will be sent back, I believe, to stage 6. So, you want to say no to this question. Unless you feel like doing stage 6 again, and then 7, and then the beginning of this stage again. So, yeah, I wouldn't choose that. I believe in 2 players, you get to fight the second player if you make this decision. I think it plays out a little bit differently. But, yeah, so take care of these minions. It's not hard. They're a little bit more aggressive versions of the regular thugs. They're a little bit faster, but you can still group them together and pull the same bullshit. Use the pipe if you want. Now, the last boss is tough. I guess it would probably be the toughest fight in the game overall. And I didn't master it, but I have some general hints. You want to try to keep the boss on either side of you and kind of mash the punch so he walks into your punch like that. Because he'll retreat and come back into your fist sometimes. You can get some damage like that. And you want to try to throw him whenever possible. It's good to try to keep both the enemies and the boss on the opposite side of you. So that they're grouped together. It's pretty shitty when you get sandwiched by the thugs and the boss. And it does happen a lot because they do try to flank you constantly. So you want to try to position yourself so it doesn't happen. You can see I didn't have this final fight practiced or mastered that well at all. So it was very close. Now, if I was going to make a proper tutorial, I would have, practiced and maybe did a deathless run on that. Of course, as I did with some of my other tutorials. But this was basically my 1cc and just adding a breakdown. But luckily, I had a lot of lives to burn. That's why I was able to beat this on 1cc. You want to try to grab him and throw him whenever possible. Grab him, hit him twice, and throw him if you can. And try to keep him on the opposite side of you, because he will run into your fist if he's on the opposite side. You can get shot, but I usually don't worry about getting hit with the bullets because they don't hit me too often. I think as long as you're punching, you can punch the bullet out of the air or some shit. It's kind of weird. But yeah, you want to try to keep him on the opposite side of you with the enemy if possible, so you can hit them both at the same time. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, really, that's a fight you really want to practice a lot with save and load states, because you can see I didn't have that down. And I wasn't even expecting to get a 1cc or really going for a 1cc. I mean, I tried to do it, but I didn't set up my practice to allow for a 1cc. I just ended up doing better than I expected on my attempt. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I covered everything. And if you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.